I woke up to my $15,000 snowplow getting absolutely demolished, right in my own driveway. Sledgehammer smashing steel, windows exploding, hydraulic lines bursting like fireworks in the snow. And through my bedroom window, our HOA president, Vivian Ashworth, arms crossed, smirking like she just won the lottery. For months she'd been hitting me with escalating fines, $50, $100, $500, claiming my plow was commercial equipment, violating some hidden rule. I refused to move it off my own property, so she escalated to straight-up destruction. Here's the delicious irony they never saw coming. I'm the only guy in this entire subdivision who clears their roads every single winter. Without me, their fancy SUVs are buried, their driveways are ice rinks, and their multi-million-dollar homes become isolated fortresses. What would you do if your HOA wrecked your livelihood? Overparking, drop, I'd let them freeze below, or share your worst HOA nightmare, tag your state/city. Let's see how many snowbelt warriors are watching. Let me back up and tell you how we got here, because this revenge story has more layers than a Colorado snowdrift. My name's Garrett Holbrook, and I've been clearing snow in Millfield Heights for 15 years. This isn't some weekend side hustle. It's the family business my grandfather started in 1970 when this subdivision was just dirt roads and developer dreams. Picture the routine. 4:30 a.m., diesel engine rumbling to life with that deep, throaty growl that echoes off sleeping houses. The smell of exhaust mixing with pine-sharp mountain air, leather steering wheel so cold it burns your palms through work gloves. That metallic bite of sub-zero air hitting your lungs. I've been breathing that combination since I was 12, riding shotgun with Grandpa Joe. He taught me everything. Which driveways needed extra salt, whose mailbox to avoid, how Mrs. Patterson always left hot coffee on her porch during the worst storms. We're not just moving snow, Garrett, he'd say, breath visible in the frigid air. We're keeping community alive. After my divorce last year, this business became my lifeline. 2 kids to support, Emma's 16 and fierce as a blizzard, Tyler's 14 and already learning to operate the smaller equipment. We live in the same modest ranch house on Pinewood Circle that Grandpa bought in 1974. Nothing fancy, but it's paid for and it's ours. The neighborhood used to reflect those values. Working families, teachers, small business owners who knew your name and appreciated honest work. People who'd wave from warm windows at 5 a.m., bring hot soup during 18-hour storm shifts, actually understand that snow removal isn't glamorous, but it's essential. But things changed. Half the houses now belong to tech executives and California transplants who see property values where I see neighbors. They want the service, but not the reminder that blue-collar work makes their comfortable lives possible. Enter Vivian Ashworth. 52, retired tech executive, drives a spotless white Tesla like it's a statement piece. Moved here 3 years ago from some gated community outside San Francisco, immediately started reshaping the neighborhood to match her vision of suburban perfection. HOA board member within 6 months, president within 12 months. She lives exactly 4 houses down from me, and in 3 years, she's never once acknowledged my existence. Not a wave, not a nod, certainly not gratitude when her precious driveway gets cleared before dawn so she can make hot yoga class. But she notices everything else with laser precision. The trouble started after a monster February storm. 2 feet of powder overnight, winds howling like banshees, temperature dropping to -15. I worked 14 straight hours, every driveway cleared, every sidewalk salted, every elderly neighbor checked on personally. Exhausted, muscles aching from fighting the storm, I parked my truck in my own driveway. Same spot I'd used for 15 years, plow detached and properly positioned. Nothing illegal, nothing dangerous, just honest equipment resting after honest work. Next morning, crisp white envelope tucked under my windshield wiper like a declaration of war. Notice of violation blazed across the top in aggressive red letters. $50 fine for violating Section 12.7b of Neighborhood Covenants. Commercial vehicles exceeding 8,000 pounds prohibited in residential driveways. The audacity was breathtaking. This truck had been protecting this neighborhood since before half these McMansions existed. The crunch of gravel under my work boots as I read that bureaucratic nonsense. That's the sound of a man realizing he's under deliberate attack. Vivian's handwritten note made it personal. Mr. Holbrook, maintaining neighborhood aesthetics is everyone's responsibility. Please ensure future compliance to preserve property values for all residents. Property values, community standards, aesthetic responsibility. Translation: people like you don't belong in our new suburban paradise. I paid the $50, figuring maybe she needed one power trip to feel important. That was my first mistake. You don't feed entitled bullies. You document their behavior and prepare for war, because Vivian Ashworth had no idea who she'd just declared war against. 2 weeks later, the second envelope arrived like a declaration of war. Same violation, but the fine had doubled to $100. Vivian's note was shorter, icier. Second violation: relocate commercial equipment immediately or face escalating penalties. Escalating penalties. Like I was some repeat offender instead of the guy who'd saved her from being buried alive in snowdrifts. But here's where Vivian made her first fatal miscalculation. She called an emergency HOA meeting for Thursday night. The agenda, mysteriously delivered to every house except mine, contained exactly one item: proposal to amend vehicle restrictions for enhanced neighborhood compliance. I only found out because Dorothy Kellerman, 83 and sharper than a plow blade, knocked on my door with a smuggled copy. You need to see this, Garrett. That woman's cooking up something rotten. The community center that Thursday reeked of stale coffee and fresh ambition. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like angry wasps while 30 neighbors sat in folding chairs that squeaked with every nervous shift. Vivian commanded the front podium like Napoleon reviewing troops before Waterloo. As I was explaining, she continued, pointedly ignoring my entrance, current vehicle restrictions have proven insufficient for maintaining our community's residential character. There's that phrase again. Residential character. Politicians speak for people like him don't belong here. She'd prepared a full PowerPoint presentation because of course she had. Slide after slide of comparable upscale neighborhoods with pristine driveways, manicured everything, not a single work truck contaminating the view. Each click of her laser pointer felt like a slap. Therefore, I propose amending Section 12.7b to require all commercial vehicles, regardless of weight, to be parked off-property during non-operational hours. Here came the mini twist that showed just how thoroughly she'd planned this ambush. Her husband Lawrence, city councilman and part-time legal eagle, had researched precedent cases. The amendment wouldn't technically target me by name. It would apply to any resident operating commercial vehicles in residential areas, except I was literally the only person it affected. Pure genius, if you appreciate that level of calculated cruelty. Furthermore, Vivian savored each word like expensive champagne, will implement daily fines of $200 for violations, effective immediately upon approval. My neighbors squirmed in their squeaky chairs. These weren't evil people. Most genuinely appreciated having their driveways cleared, but nobody wanted to be the lone voice challenging the HOA president over parking regulations. That's when I decided to deploy what my grandfather had taught me about reading contracts. Always know what you signed, Garrett, he'd said, showing me how developers buried important clauses in page 47 of subdivision agreements. The devil lives in the details, and most folks never bother looking. Point of order, I announced, standing slowly. The room went dead silent except for that angry fluorescent buzzing. Vivian's perfectly composed mask flickered. Excuse me? I pulled out the manila folder I'd spent 3 sleepless nights assembling from basement archives and county records. Before voting on new restrictions, shouldn't we review existing contractual obligations? My grandfather's snow removal contract with this subdivision, signed January 1970, 15 years before this HOA even existed. The energy in that stuffy room shifted like barometric pressure before a blizzard. I distributed photocopies to increasingly interested board members while Vivian's face cycled through several shades of red. Section 4.2 specifically guarantees equipment storage rights on the contractor's residential property. Legal precedent calls these grandfathered provisions. They supersede any subsequent HOA regulations regardless of when they're enacted. Lawrence actually choked on his coffee. Even he hadn't thought to check pre-HOA agreements. Mr. Holbrook, Vivian's voice could have frozen antifreeze, will need our legal counsel to review these alleged documents. Alleged. Like I'd spent my weekend forging historical contracts in my basement. Absolutely. Meanwhile, I trust this harassment campaign will pause pending proper legal review. The word harassment landed like a perfectly aimed snowball. Several neighbors nodded approvingly. Even Lawrence shifted uncomfortably in his seat. But the real victory came after the meeting ended. Dorothy approached first, trailing an unexpected parade. Tom Martinez, whose driveway I'd cleared hundreds of times. Sarah Smith, who always waved from her kitchen window during dawn runs. The Hendersons, newcomers who'd been intimidated into silence until tonight. "We've been talking," Dorothy said quietly. "Vivian's targeting other families, too. The Johnsons got cited for their landscaping trailer. The Kellys were fined for having a moving truck during their actual move. A pattern. Beautiful, documented, prosecutable pattern. She's systematically pushing out working families," Tom added. "Anyone who doesn't match her country club fantasy." That night, spreading legal documents across my kitchen table like battle maps, I understood this fight had evolved beyond personal revenge. Vivian was gentrifying the neighborhood one citation at a time, erasing the blue-collar heart that made this place a real community. But I just proved something important. Preparation beats power every single time. 3 days after my legal ambush at the HOA meeting, my phone rang at 7 a.m. sharp like an alarm clock from hell. "Mr. Holbrook? Inspector Rodriguez, City Code Enforcement. We've received multiple complaints about industrial activity in your residential zone. I need to schedule an inspection today." Multiple complaints. The coffee in my mouth suddenly tasted like defeat. I could practically smell Vivian's manicured fingerprints all over this escalation. "What specific complaints?" I asked, knowing somewhere a recorder was capturing every word. "Noise violations starting at 4 a.m., air quality concerns from diesel emissions, potential zoning infractions for commercial operations in residential areas. Are you available this afternoon?" Here's something I learned the hard way. When politicians can't win legally, they just multiply the battlefields until you collapse from exhaustion. My grandfather used to say, "Garrett, when city inspectors show up unannounced, somebody with connections made a phone call." Vivian had obviously leveraged her city councilman husband's influence to weaponize the bureaucracy against me. Inspector Rodriguez arrived during my absolute worst possible timing, February Equipment Maintenance Day. 6 commercial accounts worth of plows getting serviced, diesel engines rumbling like angry bears, hydraulic fluid being tested and changed. The symphony of a working man's livelihood, now suddenly suspicious. Rodriguez seemed professional enough but thorough to the point of obsession. He measured noise levels from 3 different positions, took air quality readings that would have impressed NASA scientists, photographed every piece of equipment like he was documenting a crime scene for prosecution. The acrid smell of hydraulic fluid mixed with winter air while he scribbled notes with the intensity of someone building a case, rather than conducting routine inspection. "Mr. Holbrook, this modified exhaust system doesn't meet current residential emissions standards." Modified exhaust system? I'd installed a standard cold weather adapter, equipment every serious snow contractor in Colorado uses to prevent freeze-ups during sub-zero operations. Nothing exotic, nothing unusual, definitely nothing illegal. That's a $500 fine plus mandatory reinspection within 30 days, all commercial operations suspended until compliance. My world tilted sideways. Suspended operations meant losing contracts I'd spent 15 years building. February mortgage payments suddenly uncertain. Emma's ski team fees, Tyler's school expenses, basic family survival hanging on an exhaust pipe that had been perfectly legal yesterday morning. That night, panic drove me deep into municipal code research that most people would consider torture. 3 hours of cross-referencing regulations, hunting through exemptions, fighting the sinking feeling that Vivian had finally found my weak spot. Then I discovered something beautiful buried in Section 47. 3C of residential zoning codes. Properties where commercial vehicle operators maintain primary residence are exempt from emission standards applicable to commercial lots and industrial zones. The exact regulation Rodriguez had cited applied only to business districts, not to contractors' homes. He'd either made an honest mistake or deliberately misapplied commercial standards to residential property. Given the timing and Vivian's obvious involvement, I suspected the latter. My grandfather's wisdom echoed again. "Son, when authority figures start quoting regulations, make damn sure they know what they're talking about. Half these bureaucrats couldn't find their own regulations in a phone booth." Friday morning, I filed formal complaints with both the city manager and state contractor licensing board. Not just about the improper citation, but about selective enforcement and apparent regulatory ignorance from someone paid to know better. But here's where the mini twist gets delicious. While researching Rodriguez's inspection history, I discovered his side business: Mountain Air Solutions, commercial filtration systems. The same expensive equipment he'd been recommending to fix emission violations that weren't actually violations. A perfect little racket generating steady income from confused contractors. By Thursday afternoon, my phone was buzzing with unexpected good news. Mr. Holbrook, Janet Wells, Channel 7 News. We're investigating selective enforcement in residential zoning. Multiple contractors have complained about questionable citations from the same inspector. Would you share your experience? Dorothy's network had struck again. Within hours, news crews were filming my equipment while I explained how standard cold weather adapters had magically become environmental violations. They interviewed 3 other contractors who'd received identical suspicious citations for perfectly legal equipment. The story aired Friday. Local inspector under investigation for conflict of interest. Rodriguez's air filtration business created obvious ethical problems. Site violations, recommend expensive solutions, profit from installation contracts. Saturday morning brought sweet vindication. Rodriguez suspended pending ethics investigation. My citation dismissed with prejudice. $500 fine refunded with interest. Formal apology from the city manager's office. Vivian's bureaucratic warfare had backfired spectacularly, but I could feel her desperation building like pressure in a boiler about to explode. Sunday night, reviewing security footage out of growing paranoia, I noticed something chilling. The same figure walking past my property 3 times between midnight and 2 a.m., always staying just beyond camera range. Someone was planning something more direct than paperwork. The game was escalating beyond civilized harassment, and desperate people make dangerous decisions. The reconnaissance I had spotted wasn't paranoid imagination. It was advanced planning for escalation that would make parking fines look like love letters. Tuesday morning, stepping outside with my first cup of coffee, I found 4 slashed tires on my pickup. Not random vandalism, surgical cuts in the sidewalls, the kind that whisper "message received" louder than any citation notice. $800 of damage, but the real message was crystal clear. We're done playing bureaucratic games. Here's something most people don't realize about home security. It's gotten incredibly sophisticated and surprisingly affordable. After that first parking fine, I'd called Dorothy's nephew who runs TechSecure downtown. "Garrett," he'd explained while installing cameras, "these aren't your daddy's security systems. Modern equipment can identify faces, read license plates, and upload evidence faster than vandals can destroy cameras." The installation cost me $600, but every pixel was about to pay dividends. While I was calling tire shops and calculating replacement costs, Dorothy appeared at my door, carrying intelligence worth more than gold. "Garrett, Blake Ashworth was shooting his mouth off at Murphy's bar last night. My grandson Tommy heard everything. That boy was bragging about teaching the snow guy his place." Blake. Vivian's 28-year-old son, still living in mommy's basement since his tech startup collapsed 2 years ago. The kind of entitled man-child who considers vandalism a legitimate business strategy. Tommy said Blake was drunk as a skunk, talking loud about how blue-collar trash is ruining property values. He specifically mentioned your equipment, Garrett. This wasn't random teenage stupidity. Every instinct screamed to call police immediately. But Hamilton Pierce, Dorothy's retired attorney friend, had given me counterintuitive advice that burned like medicine. Sometimes you have to let bullies escalate until they commit crimes serious enough to matter. Tire slashing gets you a misdemeanor complaint. Equipment destruction gets you felony charges and real consequences. Patience tastes like copper pennies and feels like swallowing glass, but I was learning to embrace strategic restraint. Wednesday night at 1:47 a.m., my phone exploded with motion alerts. I rolled over in bed and watched live footage of Blake Ashworth stumbling around my driveway with 2 accomplices, all 3 clearly hammered, carrying tools that gleamed under infrared lighting. For 20 excruciating minutes, I watched them systematically destroy my backup equipment. Hydraulic lines slashed like arteries, sand poured into oil reservoirs with malicious precision, control panels smashed with what looked like aluminum baseball bats. $20,000 in damage, but every swing was recorded in courtroom-quality detail. "This'll teach that working-class piece of shit," Blake slurred directly into hidden microphones. "Mom says people like him are destroying our neighborhood character." There it was, the ugly truth finally spoken without code words or political correctness. But here's where Blake's generation made their fatal mistake. His friend Marcus was filming everything on his phone, posting to Instagram stories in real time because apparently vandalism doesn't count unless it gets social media validation. Too drunk to consider consequences, too entitled to imagine accountability. The mini twist that made this perfect? Marcus tagged Blake in the videos, geolocated my address, and added captions like, "Teaching losers lessons, #neighborhoodwatch." By morning, dozens of people had screenshotted everything before Marcus sobered up and frantically deleted his digital confession. But the internet is forever, and Dorothy's network includes teenagers who understand evidence preservation better than most lawyers. I still didn't call police. Instead, I methodically documented everything like my grandfather had taught me to document snowfall totals. Multiple camera angles of the damage, cloud backups to 3 different services, timeline compilation showing escalation from citations to tire slashing to equipment destruction, an airtight criminal case that any prosecutor would salivate over. Vivian orchestrated this campaign, Hamilton explained during our emergency strategy session. Blake executed the crimes, but if we move too fast, defense lawyers will claim drunken kids making bad decisions. We need evidence proving premeditation and ongoing conspiracy. Yeah, Thursday morning brought the hardest conversation of my professional life. Calling 20 commercial clients to explain their driveways wouldn't be cleared for the rest of winter. 2 decades of reputation building, destroyed by 3 drunk idiots with baseball bats and mommy issues. The metallic taste of failure mixed with the bitter satisfaction of gathering evidence. Sometimes you have to lose battles to win wars. But something beautiful emerged from the wreckage: authentic community support. Tom Martinez offered his pickup for emergency calls. Sarah Smith organized a neighborhood fund for equipment replacement. Even neutral residents started asking pointed questions about the suspicious timing of so many random incidents targeting one family. Friday evening, reviewing footage for the 10th time, I caught Blake's most damning confession. Mom's timeline is perfect. Get rid of the undesirables before next month's town hall meeting. Town hall meeting. The quarterly community forum where Vivian apparently planned her final move. This harassment had an endgame, and now I had the timeline to prepare my counterattack. The breakthrough came from Hamilton Pierce's obsessive attention to detail and a filing system that would make librarians weep with joy. For 3 weeks, he'd been excavating HOA financial records like an archaeologist hunting treasure. Thursday afternoon, his call came with the breathless excitement of someone who just struck gold. "Garrett, drop everything and get to my office. I found something that's going to turn this entire war upside down." 20 minutes later, I sat in his book-lined office that smelled of old leather and fresh vindication, staring at bank statements that made reality tilt sideways. Vivian Ashworth had been systematically embezzling from the HOA reserve fund for 2 solid years. $47,000, gone like smoke in a Colorado wind. "Look at these transfers," Hamilton's finger traced highlighted entries, reading glasses reflecting the afternoon light filtering through dusty windows. "Every payment goes to Alpine Landscape Consulting, supposedly owned by Vivian's sister Jennifer in Denver." He slid business registration documents across his mahogany desk like a dealer revealing a royal flush. "Alpine Landscape Consulting has no employees, no equipment, no business address except a mailbox. Jennifer Ashworth has never filed taxes for this company because it exists only on paper and in Vivian's imagination." The audacity was breathtaking. She'd created a phantom business to justify stealing from her neighbors while simultaneously attacking the one person who actually provided the services she was pretending to buy. "But here's where it gets delicious," Hamilton continued, spreading invoices across his desk like evidence at a murder trial. "Look at these service descriptions." Vivian's own signature appeared on dozens of fabricated bills. Aesthetic Snow Management Consulting, $2,400. Winter Beautification Coordination, $1,800. Seasonal Maintenance Planning, $3,200. Services that never happened for a company that never existed, paid with money stolen from the community fund. The cruel irony tasted like copper pennies mixed with sweet revenge. She'd been embezzling snow removal funds while trying to eliminate the actual snow removal contractor. Now for the nuclear option. Hamilton's eyes gleamed like a prosecutor sensing victory. He pulled out my grandfather's 1970 contract. Corners yellow but signatures still bold. "Remember Section 7.2? Annual retainer payments of $5,900, inflation adjusted every 5 years. My coffee went cold while he explained the mathematics of justice. Vivian never legally terminated this contract. She just stopped payments and hoped nobody would notice. According to compound interest calculations, the HOA owes your family $89,000 in back payments. The number hit like a physical blow. $89,000. Enough to replace destroyed equipment, expand operations, secure Emma and Tyler's college funds. But the document that made everything crystallize was tucked inside Vivian's personal planner, accidentally copied with official records. Her handwriting, clear as accusation. Eliminate snow contract before May audit. Research removal of grandfathered services. Blake, handle equipment situation permanently. Handle equipment situation permanently. Written 4 days before my tires were slashed. She orchestrated Blake's vandalism to cover financial fraud, I whispered, understanding flooding through me like ice water finding cracks. If I'm driven out, who notices missing snow removal payments? Hamilton nodded with grim satisfaction. Classic embezzlement pattern. Create crisis explaining service disappearance, pocket the savings, blame external circumstances. The psychology was devastatingly elegant. Vivian's hatred stemmed from guilt. Every time she saw me working, she remembered money she'd stolen. Every friendly wave represented potential discovery. Destroying me eliminated both evidence and witness to her crimes. So what's our nuclear option? I asked, feeling power shift like tectonic plates. We have criminal fraud, conspiracy, breach of contract, enough to destroy her completely, Hamilton replied, leaning back with predatory calm. But timing matters. That town hall meeting she mentioned? She's planning something final. We let her commit to her end game, then we detonate everything publicly. For the first time since this began, I felt the cold satisfaction of holding cards that could end the game. Vivian thought she was playing chess. Turns out, I'd been holding dynamite. The next 48 hours felt like preparing for the most important battle of my life, because that's exactly what it was. Hamilton's discovery had handed me nuclear weapons, but nuclear weapons are useless unless you know exactly when and how to detonate them. We needed a strategy that would expose Vivian's crimes, protect the community, and ensure she could never hurt anyone again. Think of this like a 3-phase construction project, Hamilton explained Saturday morning, spreading documents across his dining table like a general planning D-Day. Foundation, structure, then the grand reveal. Phase 1 was documentation and evidence preservation. Hamilton had taught me something crucial during his 40 years practicing law. Digital evidence disappears faster than morning frost if you don't protect it properly. Always maintain 3 separate copies in 3 different locations. We spent Saturday creating an evidence fortress. Bank records copied to multiple cloud services. Blake's Instagram confession screenshotted and notarized. Security footage burned to DVDs and stored in Hamilton's safe deposit box. Every document that could expose Vivian's crimes was now protected against deletion, destruction, or convenient system failures. The beautiful irony? Modern evidence protection costs almost nothing but provides bulletproof legal armor. Phase 2 was the trap itself, and this required understanding Vivian's psychology better than she understood it herself. She's a control freak facing exposure, Hamilton analyzed, reviewing her documented behavior patterns. She'll escalate to increasingly desperate measures, but she's also arrogant enough to believe she can manipulate public opinion. That's when Dorothy arrived with intelligence that confirmed our strategy. Vivian's been calling an emergency town hall meeting, she announced, slightly breathless from hurrying over. She's telling people there's a community safety crisis that requires immediate action. The meeting's scheduled for next Friday, exactly 1 week before the regular quarterly forum. Perfect. She was accelerating her timeline, which meant accelerating her mistakes. What kind of safety crisis? I asked, though I suspected the answer. She's claiming your industrial equipment poses environmental and noise hazards that require emergency intervention. She's even got some petition about protecting residential character from commercial operations. Hamilton and I exchanged knowing looks. Phase 3 was falling into place without us having to engineer it. She's planning to use that meeting to justify permanent removal of snow services, Hamilton concluded, probably with some fabricated environmental report and community petition. Classic political theater to cover financial crimes. But we had our own theater to prepare. Dorothy's network became our intelligence operation. Her grandson Tommy would monitor Blake's social media for additional evidence. Sarah Smith agreed to record the town hall meeting from multiple angles, just in case Vivian tried to control official minutes. Tom Martinez volunteered to gather statements from other residents who'd been targeted by selective enforcement. The smell of conspiracy filled Hamilton's office as we planned our counterattack. But this was righteous conspiracy, the kind that exposes corruption rather than enabling it. Wednesday afternoon brought an unexpected gift. Blake posted another Instagram story, this time complaining about his mother's stress over the neighborhood problem. The video showed him in Vivian's kitchen, clearly frustrated, accidentally revealing documents spread across her granite countertop. One of those documents was a draft resignation letter for the snow removal contractor, dated 3 months in the future. She'd been planning my elimination since before the first parking citation. "This proves premeditation," Hamilton noted with satisfaction. "She didn't escalate because you refused to comply. She targeted you from the beginning as part of a broader scheme." Thursday morning, everything accelerated. Vivian distributed flyers throughout the neighborhood. Emergency Community Safety Meeting, Friday 7 p.m., address critical infrastructure concerns. The language was carefully chosen to sound urgent without being specific, designed to pack the room with worried residents who didn't understand the real agenda. But her flyer contained a fatal tactical error. She'd listed specific environmental concerns that required immediate action, including noise levels and emission standards. The same standards that Inspector Rodriguez had improperly applied, and which had already been debunked by city officials. She's doubling down on debunked claims, I realized. When we expose the inspector's fraud, her entire environmental argument collapses. Hamilton smiled like a chess master watching his opponent walk into checkmate. Better than that. When she presents fabricated environmental data at a public meeting, she's committing perjury in front of witnesses. That's a felony that carries serious prison time. Friday evening couldn't arrive fast enough. The trap was set, the evidence was bulletproof, and our allies were positioned. Vivian thought she was orchestrating my public humiliation and permanent removal from the neighborhood. Instead, she was about to experience the most spectacular public destruction of credibility this community had ever witnessed. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's letting your enemies destroy themselves while you document every moment for posterity. Monday morning brought the storm that would set everything in motion, and I'm not talking about the weather. 18 inches of snow overnight, temperatures plummeting to -12 degrees, winds howling like banshees across the Front Range. The kind of storm that transforms suburbia into an Arctic wasteland and reminds everyone why professional snow removal isn't a luxury, it's survival. My phone started ringing at 4 a.m. Mrs. Patterson, 87 and diabetic, couldn't get to her medical appointment. The Hendersons' driveway was buried under 3-foot drifts. Tom Martinez's wife was due at the hospital for chemotherapy treatment, but their street looked like the Iditarod Trail. And my equipment? Still destroyed, sitting in my driveway like metallic tombstones marking Blake's vandalism. The irony was so thick you could shovel it. The community desperately needed snow removal services on the exact day Vivian planned to eliminate them permanently. But here's what made this storm different. It exposed the fatal flaw in Vivian's master plan. She'd spent months convincing herself that snow removal was an unnecessary expense, a blue-collar anachronism that sophisticated communities could eliminate. Watching her neighbors slip and slide down icy driveways, watching emergency vehicles struggle through unplowed streets, she finally understood what my grandfather had known for 50 years. Some services aren't optional, they're essential. By Tuesday morning, Vivian's phone was ringing constantly, angry neighbors demanding to know why the roads weren't cleared, elderly residents trapped in their homes, parents unable to get children to school safely. And where was the HOA president's miraculous solution? Nowhere. Because Alpine Landscape Consulting, her phantom company that had allegedly been providing snow services, existed only on fraudulent invoices. That's when panic set in, and panic makes smart people do incredibly stupid things. Tuesday afternoon, I watched from my kitchen window as Vivian marched down the street toward my house, her usually perfect appearance disheveled from trudging through unplowed snow. Her white Tesla sat buried in her driveway like a very expensive paperweight, useless against Colorado winter reality. The knock on my door came at 3:47 p.m., sharp and insistent. "Mr. Holbrook?" Vivian's voice carried none of its usual authority, just desperate edge wrapped in fake politeness. "I understand you're experiencing equipment difficulties. Perhaps we can discuss temporary arrangements." Temporary arrangements. After months of harassment, citations, and orchestrated vandalism, she wanted to negotiate like none of it had happened. "What kind of arrangements?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral while mentally recording every word. "Well, the community is facing some challenges with the current weather situation. If you could prioritize emergency access, medical appointments, essential travel, the HOA board might be willing to postpone certain regulatory discussions." Postpone regulatory discussions. Translation: ignore the embezzlement and fraud if you'll save me from angry neighbors. The smell of desperation was stronger than the coffee brewing in my kitchen. "That's interesting," I replied carefully. "But my equipment was vandalized last week. Even if I wanted to help, I'm not sure what I could do." Her mask slipped completely. "Perhaps the HOA could authorize emergency equipment rental. We have discretionary funds available for community crises." Discretionary funds. The same reserve account she'd been stealing from for 2 years. "I'll think about it," I told her, watching hope flicker in her eyes like a dying light bulb. She actually smiled, the first genuine expression I'd ever seen from her. Relief flooding across features that had carried nothing but hostility for months. But Wednesday morning brought the escalation that sealed her fate. Blake appeared at my door at 7 a.m., clearly sent by his mother, carrying an envelope thick with cash. "Look, man," he stammered, avoiding eye contact like a guilty child. "My mom asked me to bring this. Call it emergency compensation for equipment repairs. She really needs the roads cleared before Friday's meeting. Emergency compensation. $5,000 in $100 bills, handed over by the same person who'd destroyed my equipment with baseball bats. The beautiful irony? Blake was so panicked about facing angry neighbors that he'd forgotten our entire history. He was literally offering me money to fix equipment he'd vandalized, apparently believing I didn't know he was responsible. "That's very generous," I said, accepting the envelope while Blake shifted nervously on my doorstep. "But I'm curious, why the sudden urgency?" "Mom says the meeting Friday is really important for community relations. She wants everything to look normal. Normal. After embezzlement, harassment, and criminal vandalism." That afternoon, I called my cousin Pete, who runs snow removal in Lakewood. "I need backup equipment for a special job," I explained. "Something that can handle emergency access but won't be obvious from the street." By Thursday evening, Pete's backup plow was hidden in Tom Martinez's garage, ready for deployment. Vivian thought she'd bought my cooperation with panic money and desperate promises. Instead, she'd just provided additional evidence of bribery while giving me the perfect setup for Friday's grand finale. Thursday night, Vivian Ashworth made her final desperate gambit, and it was spectacular in its stupidity. At 11 p.m., my security cameras caught her sneaking around my property like a suburban ninja, carrying what looked like official city documents. She spent 20 minutes photographing my abandoned equipment, measuring distances and taking notes that would apparently support her Friday presentation. The woman was building a fake case file in real time. But here's what made it beautiful. She had no idea my destroyed equipment was actually functional. Hamilton had suggested a brilliant bit of theater: leave everything looking damaged while secretly repairing the essential systems. To casual observation, my plow appeared totaled. In reality, it would start and operate perfectly when needed. "Let her document non-functional equipment," Hamilton had advised. "When you demonstrate it works perfectly, her entire presentation becomes perjury." Friday morning brought Vivian's final escalation, a formal notice posted on every door in the subdivision. Emergency Community Safety Meeting, 7 p.m., Critical Infrastructure Crisis. The flyer listed specific grievances against continued industrial operations endangering residential safety and environmental standards. She'd gone full bureaucrat, complete with official-sounding language about emission violations, noise ordinance infractions, and zoning compliance failures. Every claim had been previously debunked, but she was counting on residents not remembering technical details. The tactical error was massive. She'd put her lies in writing and distributed them as evidence. "She just handed us a perjury case," Hamilton noted with satisfaction. "Every false claim on that flyer becomes criminal evidence when she presents it under oath at a public meeting." But Vivian wasn't finished digging her grave. Friday afternoon, Blake arrived with an even more desperate offering, a handwritten letter from his mother. "Mr. Holbrook," the note began in Vivian's precise script, "I apologize for any misunderstandings regarding neighborhood regulations. Perhaps we can reach a mutually beneficial arrangement that serves everyone's interests." The letter proposed an under-the-table deal, I would publicly support eliminating snow removal services at the meeting, and she would ensure all citations were dismissed, plus provide consultancy compensation of $15,000. She was literally offering to pay me to participate in covering up her embezzlement. Blake handed over the letter like he was delivering a peace treaty instead of evidence of attempted bribery. "Mom really hopes you'll consider this," he said, still apparently unaware that I knew he'd vandalized my equipment. "She thinks it could benefit everyone." "I'll definitely consider it," I replied, accepting written proof of attempted corruption. That afternoon, Dorothy's intelligence network revealed Vivian's final desperate move. She'd convinced her husband Lawrence to arrange independent verification of her environmental claims through a city inspector. The same Inspector Rodriguez who'd already been suspended for ethics violations. "She doesn't know Rodriguez is suspended," Dorothy reported with glee. "Lawrence pulled strings to get him reinstated temporarily for this one inspection. She thinks she's getting expert validation for her fake environmental data." Perfect. Vivian was doubling down on already discredited evidence while adding witness tampering to her growing list of crimes. Friday at 5 p.m., Rodriguez arrived to conduct his independent inspection, clearly uncomfortable with the arrangement but apparently willing to provide favorable findings for the right price. I watched from my kitchen window as he spent 30 minutes measuring, photographing, and documenting equipment he'd already improperly cited. This time, however, I was recording his every move while Hamilton documented the coordinated fraud. "This establishes conspiracy," Hamilton noted, reviewing footage of Rodriguez obviously staging his inspection. Vivian coordinated with a suspended city official to fabricate evidence supporting her embezzlement cover-up. 2 hours before the meeting, my phone rang with Vivian's final plea. "Mr. Holbrook, I hope you'll consider our proposal carefully. This meeting is very important for community unity. It would be unfortunate if personal disagreements affected everyone's property values." Personal disagreements. She was characterizing months of harassment, vandalism, and embezzlement as a simple misunderstanding between neighbors. "I'll be at the meeting," I assured her. "Wouldn't miss it for the world." The relief in her voice was audible. "Thank you. I think tonight will resolve everything satisfactorily." She actually believed I was going to support her fabricated environmental case in exchange for hush money. 6:45 p.m. Hamilton arrived with 3 briefcases full of evidence. 6:50 p.m. Dorothy confirmed the community center was packed beyond capacity. 6:55 p.m. Tom Martinez texted that local news crews had arrived, tipped off by concerned residents. 7 p.m. Vivian took the podium, confident she was about to deliver my professional execution. Instead, she was about to experience the most public destruction of credibility in Millfield Heights history. The trap was sprung, the evidence was overwhelming, and justice was finally ready to show its teeth. 7 o'clock sharp, the Millfield Heights Community Center was packed beyond fire code limits. Worried residents filled every folding chair, lined the walls, and spilled into the hallway. The air hummed with nervous energy and the collective anxiety of people who'd spent a week trapped by unplowed roads. Vivian Ashworth stood at the podium like a prosecutor presenting her closing argument, wearing her most authoritative navy suit and the confident smile of someone certain she held all the cards. She had no idea she was about to be destroyed. "Thank you all for coming to address this critical community safety issue," Vivian began, her voice carrying the polished authority of someone accustomed to controlling narratives. "Tonight we'll discuss the ongoing environmental and safety violations that have endangered our neighborhood for months." She clicked through her PowerPoint presentation like a seasoned politician, each slide meticulously crafted to support her fiction. Photos of my abandoned equipment, charts showing excessive noise levels, environmental data that looked official but was completely fabricated. Independent city inspection confirms that continued industrial operations in our residential zone violate multiple safety and environmental standards, she announced, gesturing toward Inspector Rodriguez, who sat in the front row looking increasingly uncomfortable. The room murmured with concern. These were good people who trusted their HOA president, who had no reason to suspect the elaborate fraud being presented as community protection. That's when I stood up. "Point of order, Madam President." Every head in the room turned toward me. Conversations died mid-sentence. The only sound was the hum of fluorescent lights and the collective intake of breath from 60 worried neighbors. Vivian's mask flickered for just a moment before her professional smile returned. "Mr. Holbrook, this isn't the appropriate time for questions." "Actually," Hamilton Pierce rose beside me, briefcase in hand, "it's the perfect time. Before this community votes on eliminating essential services, they deserve to know the truth about why those services are really being targeted. I pulled out my laptop and connected it to the projection system Vivian had been using for her presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, what you've just heard is a carefully constructed lie designed to cover up 2 years of embezzlement from your HOA reserve fund. The room erupted. Chairs squeaked as people leaned forward. Whispered conversations exploded into concerned chatter. "That's enough," Vivian's voice cracked like a whip. "Security, please remove these disruptive individuals." "What security?" Dorothy called out from the middle of the room. "And why are you afraid of evidence?" My first slide appeared on the projection screen. Bank records showing $47,000 transferred to Alpine Landscape Consulting. For 2 years, your HOA president has been stealing money designated for snow removal services, I explained, my voice carrying clearly through the suddenly silent room. The environmental violations you just heard about? They're fabrications designed to justify eliminating the services she's been stealing funds from. Vivian's face went through several shades of red and white as I clicked to the next slide. Business registration documents proving Alpine Landscape Consulting was a shell company. The inspector who supposedly confirmed these violations? I gestured toward Rodriguez, who was trying to sink into his chair. He was suspended last month for ethics violations related to fraudulent citations. Inspector Rodriguez actually stood up and walked out, apparently deciding his reputation wasn't worth whatever Vivian had promised him. But the nuclear moment came with my third slide. Security footage of Blake destroying my equipment while explicitly stating his mother's instructions. The crystal-clear video showed Blake swinging a baseball bat at hydraulic lines while shouting, "This'll teach that blue-collar piece of shit. Mom says people like him are ruining property values." The room went dead silent. You could hear snow melting off people's boots. Vivian tried one last desperate gambit. "These videos are obviously fabricated. This is clearly a coordinated attack on community leadership." That's when I delivered the mic drop moment that ended her credibility forever. I walked to my laptop and pressed a single key. My destroyed snowplow roared to life in the parking lot outside, diesel engine rumbling like thunder, hydraulics functioning perfectly. Through the community center windows, everyone could see the equipment Vivian had just spent 30 minutes proving was abandoned and non-functional. "If my equipment is so dangerous and non-functional," I said quietly, "why is it running perfectly right now?" The sound of that engine idling outside was louder than any argument, more convincing than any evidence, more dramatic than any courtroom revelation. Vivian's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for water. The woman who'd commanded this room with authority 60 seconds earlier now looked like a criminal caught red-handed. "Furthermore," Hamilton announced, approaching the podium with legal documents, "I'm prepared to file criminal charges for embezzlement, fraud, conspiracy, and attempted bribery. Mrs. Ashworth offered my client $15,000 yesterday to support this fabricated environmental case." The room exploded into chaos. Angry voices, shocked gasps, the sound of folding chairs scraping as people stood to get better views of the unfolding drama. Through it all, my snowplow continued rumbling outside like a mechanical truth-teller, proving that some lies are too big to maintain. The aftermath of that Friday night meeting moved faster than a Colorado avalanche. By Saturday morning, Vivian had resigned from the HOA board and put her house on the market. By Monday, criminal charges were filed for embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy. By the end of the week, she and Lawrence were loading a U-Haul truck and disappearing from Millfield Heights forever. Blake faced separate criminal charges for vandalism and received court-ordered community service, specifically assisting with neighborhood snow removal operations under my direct supervision. The irony was so perfect it felt like cosmic justice. The HOA board, now led by Dorothy Kellerman's steady hand, voted unanimously to restore my grandfather's original contract with full back pay compensation, $89,000 plus interest plus punitive damages for the harassment campaign. Enough to replace every piece of equipment with upgraded models and establish a financial foundation my kids could build on. But the real victory was what happened to our community. The new board implemented anti-discrimination policies that protected blue-collar residents from selective enforcement. They established transparent financial reporting that made embezzlement impossible. Most importantly, they recognized that diverse neighborhoods with working families, retirees, and professionals create stronger communities than exclusive enclaves. 3 months later, The Clear Path Foundation held its inaugural scholarship awards ceremony. Using settlement money from Vivian's crimes, we established full-ride technical education scholarships for local students pursuing skilled trades. Emma spoke at the ceremony about respecting all honest work, while Tyler demonstrated snow removal equipment operation to fascinated younger kids. The sweet smell of redemption mixed with diesel exhaust as families gathered around gleaming equipment that represented more than snow removal. It symbolized community values worth fighting for. Our annual Winter Heroes Festival now celebrates everyone who keeps the community functioning during harsh weather. Postal workers, emergency responders, utility crews, and yes, snow removal contractors receive recognition for essential services that suburban life depends on. Vivian's attempt to eliminate undesirable workers had evolved into community-wide appreciation for honest labor. The festival takes place every February in the same community center where Vivian tried to destroy my livelihood. Children ride in decorated snowplows, families enjoy hot chocolate fundraisers, and everyone learns about the skilled trades that make comfortable suburban life possible. Inspector Rodriguez faced federal charges for corruption and lost his city position permanently. The ethics investigation revealed he'd been running the air filtration scam for years, targeting dozens of contractors with fabricated violations. My case became the cornerstone that brought down an entire network of municipal corruption. Lawrence Ashworth, surprisingly, stayed in town and rebuilt his reputation through genuine public service. He spearheaded municipal reforms that prevented future conflicts of interest and became an unlikely ally in protecting working families from bureaucratic harassment. Sometimes good people make bad choices when influenced by toxic partners. Personal healing came gradually, like snow melting after a long winter. Emma learned that standing up for what's right sometimes requires public courage even when it's uncomfortable. She now leads student government initiatives addressing workplace discrimination and class-based prejudice. Tyler discovered pride in the family business and plans to study both engineering and business management, preparing to expand snow removal into full-service infrastructure maintenance. The divorce that had seemed devastating before this crisis now felt like liberation. My ex-wife, impressed by how I'd handled the situation, became genuinely supportive of the kids spending more time learning the business. Family relationships, like community relationships, sometimes strengthen through adversity. Most satisfying of all, every December, when the first snow falls, I get thank you cards from neighbors expressing gratitude for reliable service. Mrs. Patterson bakes cookies for the crew. The Hendersons invite us for holiday dinner. Tom Martinez's wife, now cancer-free, always waves from her warm kitchen window during early morning runs. These simple gestures mean more than any legal victory or financial settlement. Because at its heart, this story isn't about revenge against one corrupt neighbor. It's about communities deciding what values matter, what services deserve respect, and what kinds of people belong in the American dream. Vivian thought she could eliminate undesirables to create suburban perfection. Instead, her attacks revealed that diversity, integrity, and mutual respect create the only kind of perfection worth having. Now, as snow begins falling outside my window, I'm reminded that winter always ends, communities can heal from division, and sometimes the people trying to push you out end up strengthening your roots instead.
You know what really got me about Gary's story? It wasn't the 89 grand he got back. It wasn't even watching Vin get arrested in front of the whole neighborhood. It was that moment when he's sitting in his kitchen, drinking coffee, watching his security cameras record Blake smashing up his equipment with baseball bats, and he does absolutely nothing. Think about the red train that takes. Watching some punk destroy your livelihood while you just sit there, knowing every swing of that bat is digging that grave a little deeper. Gary understood something more people don't. Sometimes the biggest wins come from letting your enemies destroy themselves. Vivian thought she was smart, stealing snow removal funds, then trying to eliminate the one guy who could figure it out. But she forgot something. Blue-collar guys who work with their hands usually know how to read contracts better than the Swiss sitting in boardrooms. So here's what I want to ask you. In your neighborhood, who are the people you actually can live with now? The garbage guy, the electrician, the guy who blows your trees at 4 in the morning so you can get to work. Because I guarantee you, when the real crisis hits, like that 18-inch ladder, you are not calling the HOA president, you are calling Garrett. And here's the thing about people like Vivian. They always think they are untouchable until they are not. She spent 2 years stealing money, thinking nobody would notice. But the guy she was trying to push out, he had a 50-year-old contract his grandfather signed, and he knew exactly how to use it. If this story made you think about your own neighborhood, hit that like button. Subscribe if you want more story about regular people beating the system. And tell me, who the most essential person in your community that everyone takes for granted? Remember this, the people who keep the world running usually aren't the ones sitting at the meeting table.